There's something that works through us. Like we all have this inner guide, we all have this inner voice, and we follow it to the extent of which the noise that we have in our minds drowns it out. See what makes sense in the moment as to where to go from here. And that's how my second business started during the pandemic, is following nudges, like internal nudges.
Okay, so I know that the intelligence of life is living through me. Great. Right now, life is throwing me some pretty big curveballs. How do I play this? How did you play it? Welcome back to Live Into Your Brilliance, the place where we dismantle illusions and wake ourselves up to the brilliance that's already here. Today's guest is Maria Iliffe-Wood. She is an executive coach, an author, a publisher, and someone who's discovered a powerful truth, that when we stop gripping the wheel, calm down and listen, life will show us the way. In this episode, Maria shares how her life has been guided from that place to spectacular outcomes, and how you can access that quiet intelligence to find the guidance that you have been searching for. We start off where we always do, so let's dive in and absorb Maria's wisdom. What has been either the greatest insight or, myth-busting illusion that you've shattered, that you would love our listeners to kind of reflect on or get a glimpse of, that you think has a huge degree of possibility?
What springs to mind is the very first insight that I had. That was when I first heard Dick and Bettinger speak. He's a three principles leader in the three principles world, and I didn't know what I was heading to when I walked into that conference room. I'd been working on the book that you were just talking about, Coaching Presence, which, funnily enough, I wrote the book at the point when I went to that conference. I didn't know the book was about presence. Like, I'd just literally submitted my manuscript. It had a different working title. And if somebody would have asked me to write about presence, I never would have written it, because I was like, well, what do I know about it? And so I went to that conference after having submitted my manuscript. And it's very hard to put insights into words, even now, which, this is kind of 12, 13 years ago. It was something to do with the intelligence of life works through me. And it's very hard to know what that means, but I felt like my whole of my insides open up when I had this realization that the intelligence of life works through all of us, including me, and that there's something else that's going on through us that is not, it's not me doing it. And I've had variations of that insight. It's like, I remember somebody saying once, it might have been Dickon, but it might have been somebody else, who said, you have your first insight, and then often all the insights on top of that are the same insight over and over again, but you just keep seeing it to a deeper level. You just keep seeing it to a deeper level. And what it's done for me is it's kind of allowed me, not all the time because I forget, but it's allowed me to take my hands off the steering wheel. And instead of me thinking I have to drive everything and I have to sort out where I'm going and how I'm getting there, I'm much more inclined to see what makes sense in the moment as to where to go from here. And that's how my second business started during the pandemic, is following nudges, like internal nudges that kind of said, go in this direction. And it was like, at the time, I didn't see where I was going. But when I look back, I can see the breadcrumbs, and the breadcrumbs go way back. And it's like there's something that works through us. And in my book, Coaching Presence, I called it the invisible coach. Like we all have this inner guide, we all have this inner voice, this inner wisdom that is guiding us. And we follow it to the extent of which the noise that we have in our minds drowns it out. And I've got much better over the years of not paying so much attention to the noise and paying more attention to what feels right in the moment, even not knowing what it means, even not knowing where it's going to go, like the long-term things. You mentioned the daily yarns, which was basically when the pandemic hit, our business just fell through the floor. Not sure how your business did in the pandemic, but we were working with leadership teams, and so every single bit of our work just disappeared in a week. And I had all this noise going on in my mind about, and we need to find some work, we need to sort out an income, we've got to, what are we going to do in terms of to survive? We didn't know how long it was going to last, all that kind of thing. But something else was somehow saying to me, do these posts on social media. And so every day I was spending 3 to 4 hours writing and editing these posts, which were just about what was going on that day during the pandemic. And I did that 48 days on the trot. And at 48 days, I remember thinking, oh, I might have a book here. And I kept going for a bit longer until the end of the first official lockdown. So I think it was about 70 days. And then I decided I'm going to have a go at self-publishing this book. And so it was just, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this. And then at one point, you mentioned Jules Fales. At one point, she said in a class, and Maria's starting her own publishing company. Like, her and I had not had any conversation about that at any point in time. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And it wasn't, and that's what I did. I set up the publishing company in November 2020. And people had already started asking me for help with their books and things like that. So I didn't know the reason why I was doing what I was doing. But when you look back and see the breadcrumbs, you can see how it all was leading up to this. So there's something inside us, there's a voice inside us that is eminently trustworthy. And if we can hear that more often than not, and the problem with it is it's pretty quiet. And sometimes there's not really any words with it. And it doesn't give you the answers when you want the answers. It gives you the answers when you're ready for the answers or when it's the time. But trusting that's inside of us and not paying attention to the noise, especially all the super critical noise. Like, one of the things that I really learned is all the noise that went on in my head, about what a terrible person I was or what a crap job I'd done, or, all of that awful critiquing that we do of ourselves. Like, none of that is worth paying attention to. And in a cage mind, I wrote about 10 haikus to go through the book. And my favorite one, and so many people have quoted this one back to me as well, is, I know not to trust my thinking unless it wishes me well. And I think if everybody understood that, then that just make a huge difference in the world.
Leading up to the pandemic and this this moment when you started to follow your internal inklings and the noise in your head subsided enough for you to follow these tickles. You've been doing this work with leadership teams, and you're an executive coach, and you've got a successful practice. What had you, when you kind of look back at the work you had been doing, which I'm sure was phenomenal work, what had been different in terms of your approach, your orientation around presence, the sort of the understanding of the human condition? Where had you been coming from versus where you arrived at after spending some time with Dickon and sort of deepening your grounding?
Yeah. So I'd been a coach. I did my first coach training in around 1988, something like that. So I'm coaching for a long, long time. I've done loads of coaching qualifications. I'm a team coach, leadership team coach. I'm also a coach supervisor. I work with coaches, helping them to develop their coaching practice and everything that goes with that. And so all the work that I'd done up until I came across the principles. Well, not really till I came across the principles. It was a mix between writing the book and coming across the principles. So I was pretty much doing the traditional coaching models, using all the tools, all the techniques, everything that I'd learned, and doing the writing coaching presence as part of that book. What I did is I took a really deep dive into my own coaching practice. I was really focusing on what was I doing and what was happening in the coaching relationship that was making a difference. And I was using the word invisible as kind of the basis of which my reflection was going on. I've been doing written reflections for years and years and years. And I'd use all different things in terms of reflecting on my coaching practice. But I heard the word invisible on the car radio one day, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, invisible coach. And then I started reflecting on my coaching practice using this idea of invisible coach. And the thing that came out of that was realizations for me that the way that I work with people is that I know that they have this inner guide within them, and I'm pointing them to this inner guide. And that's where I want them to listen, as opposed to listen to what I have to say. And everything that I'm doing is enabling people to listen to and hear this inner guide within them. And that the way to help that is by being present. Now, that wasn't the premise that I started off with. Like, I started off with this idea of invisible, and I was thinking about, all the times in my coaching practice, when am I invisible? When am I fully visible? As in, when am I directing? When am I really making my presence felt? And there's some in between levels as well. When am I sharing stuff about myself, or when am I using tools and techniques to help the person to? So I came up with these 4 modes of presence, which still stand today, even with my understanding. But what I really saw was that the presence is one of the biggest factors in terms of when you're working with people, helping them to see something that comes from inside them. My presence and their presence is the thing that really makes the difference, which tied in at the time with the meeting up with Dickon and coming across the principles and having this insight about the intelligence of life works through us. So what I realized is that intelligence of life works through us is exactly the same thing that I've been talking about in my book. This invisible coach, this guide that we have within us. And one of the guiding principles that I wrote in this book is we're not broken. None of us are broken. So there's nothing to fix. So, and in my coaching practice, I am talking, this is where I always go here to my heart. Like, I'm talking to that part of the person, not the noise that's going on in the head. So I'm really pleased that you asked me the question, Bailas, because I hadn't really connected that I was still doing the same thing before and after. But the difference is, before, I couldn't have articulated it. And after, now I know that's always what I'm doing. So when I kind of start going off in different tangents, I know to bring myself back. Whereas before, I think I would have, I've been working with somebody and we'd be talking about stuff, and maybe we'd use tools and techniques and models. And because because I wasn't so conscious, it wasn't quite the same. But after writing the book and coming across the principles, I was much more conscious about it. And then I spent, I did a lot of my focus of my attention went away from all of the traditional training into the more spiritual programs and things like that. So really deepened my grounding. So over the years, really got a much deeper grounding, which really helped in terms of really, being able to be with people. And even with the publishing side, I'm still always doing the same thing. That's whatever I'm doing, I'm always pointing people back to their own wisdom.
Is that what you mean, Maria, by you use the expression, that you've learned to or it's allowed you to take your hands off the steering wheel? And I'm kind of doing a little bit of the before and after, but as you've had this insight, can you explain what that means in kind of real terms, like what it looks like to have your hands on the wheel and be firmly gripping it, and what it looks like to kind of take your hands off the wheel?
Yeah. So using the coaching practice as a way of just showing that. So before all of this, I would reflect on my coaching practice, reflect on what was happening with the client. And as part of that reflection, it will always be, next time I'm with the client, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do the other. I'll have all these ideas of what I'm going to do. So now what happens is when I'm with a coaching client, I'm present with the coaching client. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what tools or techniques, if any, I'm going to use. I use very few tools and techniques these days. And I very much, the way that I see it is that I listen without trying to work out what to say next. Completely listen, and then when there is like a space for me to speak, then I wait to see what occurs to me in order to be able to to say or do whatever it is that I'm going to say or do next. So I'm not thinking, I'm not sitting thinking when I'm coaching somebody, I'm not sitting thinking, okay, so what does this person need? What do I need to do with them? What's going to help them to see something new? Like, I had none of that. It's like, okay, we're just paying attention, being really present, and then seeing what shows up in terms of then having a conversation.
As you said, as you said that, I thought, I imagine the leaders you've coached, and I'm thinking about people that I work with, because I would imagine that you would say to them, oh, you can do that as a leader of, like, with any human being. Like, you can show up and it works, just being totally present, nothing on your mind, and trusting that you'll see what you're meant to see, you'll say what you're meant to say. But I can imagine some people be like, whoa, like, that sounds great, but I can't afford to do that. I've got to get somewhere. We've got, like, targets to hit. We've got books to get out. Surely, like, we can't be that passive. That's the word that comes to mind, that people would think, is that not being really passive? What would you say to someone who kind of maybe hears that, and that's their insecurity that pops up, or that's the word that pops up, which is
the language that we're using with anybody that I'm working with? Kind of don't jump full into the spiritual language. We're always using language that we kind of want to meet people where they're at in terms of that. One of the things that when I'm working with leadership teams and when we're working with leaders, we talk about a state of mind. We talk about a healthy state of mind and an unhealthy state of mind. We talk about high quality thinking and low quality thinking. And people really, and part of the reason why we do that is because when we're in organizations, we want to give people a language that they can speak with each other, because we work with quite a few people in the organization often. So we kind of use language that when they're talking to each other, they'll know. So we talk about a snow globe, the snow globe metaphor, and we talk about we call it above the line and below the line. When people are below the line, they're in a really calm, present, healthy state of mind. And when they're above the line, they've got a lot of noise and things going on. And people really get it. We don't get any comeback. We get questions like, well, we need a bit of ego. We need ego to be able to do this, and we need some competition. And but we don't say, no, you don't need ego, or no, you don't need competition. We say, well, it depends whether you're paying attention to the noise or whether you're coming from a calm place. And what I found more than anything is when people are coming from a calm place, it's much more dynamic. Even in my own experience of life, like I get so much more done when I'm coming from this place rather than when I'm coming from all the noise in my head and thinking I'm trying to drive. I remember one guy, we were working with a leadership team for 2.5 days, and he'd spent the whole weekend working on a report that he needed to get in before he could come onto the program. And he said, if he'd have known what he knew after the 2 days, the report would have taken him half the time to do. Because when people are paying attention to the noise and they're caught up in the noise, it's poor quality thinking. They're more likely to make mistakes. They feel like they're wading through a treacle. They're not thinking straight. They've not got clarity. When they're coming from a clearer state of mind, they've got more clarity. They can see more clearly what needs to be done. They get better ideas. So we kind of bring people into it.
Maria, I'm really fascinated by this because Al and I have a similar sort of metaphor or visual aid where we talk about being in the basement of your thinking or riding this sort of elevator up to a higher level of consciousness from that vantage point the view is better and you have better perspective and it's understanding where you are at, which then allows you to then approach or take a sacred pause or whatever you need to do in order to be more effective. But I'm fascinated by what you've just said because I think as a novice practitioner, and I'm not trying to put myself down, but as a novice practitioner, as somebody who is so excited about what you see when you come from that below the line present state and the exponential creativity and innovation and contribution you can make from that place. I am like so exuberant about that place and so desperately want others to be there and see it and feel it and I mean my darling daughter who I spoke about earlier, she will often say to me, okay Dad, yeah I got it, like stop preaching at me.
Yeah, you can't tell your kids.
you can't tell your kids. And then and Vanessa, my wife, God love her, she's so long suffering because sometimes she'll just be like, okay Billows, like just shh, I get it. but when you're with a group of execs and you're using a vernacular that I'm assuming you don't want to scare the bejesus out of them and have them head for the hills, so you're meeting them where they're at. You're using a vernacular that is accessible. They can appropriate it. They can use it at work, and but you still want them to see it. You want them to feel it. Is that something, or do you sort of? What's your approach to the sort of the practice and the actual experience of it, as opposed to just the words?
Yeah, the desire to want somebody else to get it is getting in your way.
Yeah.
So we say, don't have to believe us. But what we invite them to be is get really curious about how it works for themselves. We say to them, if you don't, if what we're saying doesn't work for you, you tell me what works for you. How do you see it, as opposed to like trying to kind of push it on. I mean, we're quite the biggest. So one of the things, because when I say we, I'm talking about myself and my husband, because we do a lot of this work together, and we absolutely love doing this work together when we do this. We always say that our job is just to be present. And so we run these programs, which on the face of it, and we run with lots of different groups of people. On the face of it, it looks like it's the same program over and over, but we never run the same program twice, because we're always being in the moment with the people that we're with. And what we do want them to experience it, but we're not trying to make them experience it. We really trust that us staying doing the best that we can to show it as a, when we're in writing, we talk a lot about show don't tell. We're showing it more than we're telling it. And I suppose part of it is because having been around it so much, and for me especially with all the writing that I've done, because an awful lot of my writing, whether it was coaching presence, whether it was a caged mind, whether it was daily yarns and my poetry collections coming out soon, it's all come from a deep reflection. And especially when I was writing A Caged Mind, I went right back through my whole life and could see how this was guiding me, even as a small child, even when I didn't think it was guiding me. And I've really seen how it has guided me at so many different points in my life. And so I'm very trusting of it. We're very trusting that we stay present with the group. We know roughly what we're sharing. We know roughly what kind of language that we're using, so that they can talk to each other using the same language. But we're very much, we're not trying to convince you of anything. And our model is kind of like model. We it's opposite way round to, people talk about higher levels of consciousness, so that might be above the line. Above the line might be higher level of consciousness. Below the line is you're in the Maya kind of thing. But we switched it around because when we're in low quality thinking, when we're in all that noise, you kind of have to think yourself in there, up there. But to be in the calm presence, you fall there when this noise settles. So that's why we go below the line, is this calm place, because it's the place that we naturally go to when all the noise subsides. We don't have to work to get ourselves here, but we're working damned hard to get us above the line. Like there's awful lot of thinking, an awful lot of unconscious thinking, an awful lot of old habituated thinking that we're probably not even aware that we're doing. But there's an awful lot contributing to taking us into low quality thinking or an unhealthy state of mind.
So that was very useful. And if I may, just to kind of just finish the thought a bit. So I love the below the line, because Al and I talk about flopping into the lazy boy of your consciousness, and that definitely is resonant of like going back and down, as opposed to trying to keep yourself up in this crazy state. And and I'm sure I speak for Al and myself, like when you're there, this wonderful sensation of, I don't have to have my hands on any steering wheel. In fact, like I go where I go, because I know that's my inner wisdom pointing me there, and I choose to take a step or not take a step from that place. So I love it, and everything you said resonates. But when you're doing your work and you've kind of you're very present to that reality and that wisdom, and you're with people, are there any practices that you and your husband put into the room or speak into the room that allow people to take a step towards seeing that for themselves?
No.
There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I'm just curious because, for the listener listening to this, they're like, okay, cool. I hear what you guys are saying, but where do I begin?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we say to people, we say it a lot, is you're going to ask us how to do this, and we're not going to give you an answer.
I bet that goes down well.
They do get used to the answer being, we're not going to tell you how. It's very much a trusting that people are going to see it for themselves, and we're not expecting them to get it in day one. More often than not, we're working with these people for a period of 6 to 9 months, and we keep coming back to it, and we don't focus entirely on it. Like, we do other stuff with them, so they do like the normal leadership stuff that they're going to look at. They're looking at the strategic plans, they're looking at their leadership development, they're looking at their leadership styles, they're doing a lot of all of that stuff. What we keep doing is keep bringing them back to their state of mind. So, because one of the things they say, no matter what you're doing, whether you're coming up with a vision, mission, objectives, if you're having a difficult conversation with somebody, if you're doing an appraisal, if you've got a problem to solve, first thing, always, what's your state of mind? Pay attention to your state of mind. Not even we're not saying change your state of mind. We're saying notice your state of mind. What's your state of mind like? And that informs you as to whether you're likely to make a good decision or not right in this moment. Because sometimes you might realize that you're not in a very good state of mind, but you got to make a decision. But knowing that you're not in a very good state of mind enables you to be slightly removed from that state of mind. It gives you a better chance of making a better decision in the moment if it's needed. Most people don't need to make a decision right in that moment anyway. But we've had people they've had a conversation, they've come back and they've reported, I had a meeting with somebody and I knew that my state of mind was wrong. And I said to them, I'm going to need to take 5 minutes break. And that's a huge difference for people. It doesn't sound like much, but it's a huge difference if a person can see that they're not in a good state of mind and their wisdom tells them what to do in the moment so that they're not getting caught up, because oftentimes it means getting caught up in a conversation that they don't want to get caught, doesn't get them anywhere. That makes a huge difference to people.
Yeah, I heard there's a guy called Jefferson Fisher. He's a communications expert, but it was one of those books that had nothing to do with the 3 principles, but some of the things that were in it, I thought, oh wow, that would just apply here.
Yeah.
He said the kind of hack he was giving to help people to kind of what to do when you find yourself in a state of mind or a state of an emotional state that's not necessarily conducive to the situation, is to use that phrase, I can tell I am. I can tell I am not in a great state of mind. I can tell I'm feeling a little bit of pressure here. And then to lead it with, I just need X or Y. I just need to take a minute. But that giving yourself those words to be able to say, I can tell I am. Just for me, I was like, oh, that's a really good entry point for someone to just acknowledge out loud, even if it's to themselves. Oh, I can tell I'm here.
Yeah. But one of the things that we're really conscious of, we don't want to give people things to do because we want them to rely on their inner wisdom. and their inner wisdom will give them something in the moment without us having to think in advance what we might want to do. So, for example, one leadership team that we're working with, we often get them to bring a live problem to the group. So this is a leadership team, 6 to 8 people, sometimes more, who have had a problem that they've not been able to solve for a period of time, and they get half an hour on the program to work on this problem, having gone through understanding state of mind, and we've had conversations about ego and all sorts of things come up. And this one particular team, they got this problem, and we're not in the room with them. So we don't watch what's going on, because what we do afterwards is we ask them to reflect on what was happening with their state of mind. We're not bothered whether they solved the problem or not. They often do, but we're not bothered if that's what they do or not. What we're interested in is what happened. What did they notice with their state of mind while they were having that conversation? So this one particular group, they came back into the room. They'd had this conversation, and they said, we started getting above the line, which was the language that they were using. We noticed that our egos were getting in the way. We weren't getting anywhere. The HR manager noticed what was going on with her state of mind. We were in a hotel, the bowls of sweets, boiled sweets. Mm-hmm. There was boiled sweets on the table. She stood up, she picked up the bowl of boiled sweets, and she went round each of the people in the team and gave them a sweet. And then sat down, their state of minds all came down, and then they had a really, really helpful conversation. Now, you couldn't tell a person to do that. Mm. But in the moment, that's what her wisdom guided her to do in the moment. And that's what we want. So when people notice that they're in a not healthy state of mind, their wisdom will give them something as to what to do in the moment.
Mm. How tightly linked, Maria, are the two pieces that I hear you pointing at? The having this insight that the intelligence of life works through us, which, again, as I hear that, and I'm correlating that to, that's our innate wisdom.
Brilliance.
Yeah, that's our brilliance, and it's our wisdom.
Yeah.
And what you're saying, as I hear it, is all you really have to do is notice your state of mind. Like, one of the keys is to notice your state of mind. Like, if you can just be where you're at, like be with whatever that is. Am I hearing you right? What you're saying is that your wisdom will meet you there. That's the kind of gateway back to that truth of, well, if the intelligence of life works through me, I access it by, if I know that, then I can also know all I have to do is be aware of where I'm at, like notice my state of mind. Is that an accurate kind of interpretation as to what you're saying, what you're helping people see in your work, what you've seen for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would never have put it that way, but I think it puts it perfectly. Yeah, it is like, that intelligence that works within us meets us. It's like, when we're talking about writing, lots of people talk about needing the inspiration to write. There's a guy called Stephen Pressfield who wrote The Artist's Journey and Turning Pro. He's a prolific writer. He says when you put your butt in the chair, the muse appears. He's talking about the same thing. So it's not that we don't do anything. It's kind of like, for me, it seems like the intelligence requires us to have some skin in the game. So, the thing about, we're not just going to be laid back doing nothing, waiting for inspiration to hit, or, we kind of have to meet it there. And I think what you're saying, like when we notice our state of mind, in the act of noticing, that intelligence, that, okay, now you're paying attention. So now I don't know, that seems like a good explanation to me.
Well, I love that, because Al often says, and I love it when he makes this comment. He's like, it's like the wisdom of the universe is waiting in the wings, and when you do stop listening to the noise in your head and you fall back into that lazy boy, the wisdom is like, there you are. Now let's have some fun.
Mm.
And then you've got this choice, do you pay attention to the wisdom, or do you allow yourself to go back up above the line and carry on with,
Yeah.
Radio Billows or Radio L or Radio Maria, whatever is playing in your head. And I think that's what I heard in that for me is when we working with a group, and Al and I are taking a group of leaders to Wales next week, is pointing to exactly that, is to say, understand your come from, understand, are you here or are you up here? Or in your parlance, are you down below the line in your lazy boy, or are you twittering loudly above the line? And from that place, what do you, where do you sit in terms of your awareness? And then what's on offer from the quieter place when things do settle down? And then do you act on that wisdom or don't you? And that's that has been echoed, I think, across many episodes, but it is something we sometimes, and I was so encouraged at the beginning of this podcast, you said something quite innocuous. It was almost like a throwaway line, but you said, I sometimes forget. And you're a practitioner who, is disciplined about writing about this. You lead people down the road on this sort of discovery, and you forget about it, and you have to keep coming back. And I think that's such a powerful message for the listener, because it's okay. It's okay that you don't always show up from that place. You're only human, and you're going to oscillate between, being below the line and being above the line. And it's just, I think, developing that muscle to know, where am I coming from?
Yeah. But what that points to, Bilos, is that you never know what you're going to say that's going to resonate with somebody. Like, I didn't say that for a reason. I just said it because it's true. but it's like the intelligence behind life knows that that's going to resonate with you. And I've had conversations where I've made a throwaway comment in a coaching conversation, and afterwards, or at the end of the session, the person said to me, "Oh, when you said that, that was the thing that that really made the difference," and you wouldn't have even imagined it.
Mm.
You just don't know what's going to, and that's the thing that I'm much more trusting of these days, is that I'll be present. I don't know if what I'm saying is making a difference to anybody or not. All I'm doing is saying what I'm saying what's occurring to me in the moment, and hoping that it's going to land somewhere. And it's the same, in a way, it's the same with the writing. I'm running a little program at the minute called Writing from Mind, which is, one of the questions was, how do you know that what you're writing is wisdom? I don't. I write all these words. I edit a lot of it out because I don't think that's, I don't want that on the page, or, I'm not going to publish that. But I don't actually know what are the words of wisdom on the page. I know what I like, and I know what makes sense to me. And I know when I've had an insight through my writing, because I feel like when I put something on the page, what I love is when I put something on the page and it's something that I'd never thought of before. And it has meaning for me, and I feel the experience. Like, you can feel the insight. You feel when you've had the insight. But I don't know what it is that's going to come out of my mouth that might resonate with somebody. So I don't worry about it.
I'm going to take that thread and maybe just move us slightly into a different space along the same lines. And it's in that context of, well, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth next. I don't know what's going to happen next. And you said something earlier, and I'm paraphrasing, but you said, that the intelligence of life, it's often can be quite quiet. And as I heard it, at least, you said, it doesn't always come along when you want it. You can't always predict when things are going to arrive.
Yeah.
And I think that's an area that people find really tricky to be with, because it's like, well, what do I do? And maybe you might be able to use the part of your journey, which was, at least how I heard it again, in the time of COVID, when suddenly the business all disappeared, and it sounded like you were having the kind of, I wouldn't put it down as quite an existential crisis, but it sounded like quite similar to what lots
Was
of
a
us
bit
said
of
at
a
the time.
crisis.
Yeah, which was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, like, what am I going to do? Like,
Yeah.
I've got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really familiar, I think, to lots of us. We end up in situations where we're saying, okay, so I know that the intelligence of life is living through me. Great. Right now, like, life is throwing me some pretty
Big curves.
big curveballs.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I play this? How did you play it? And where does that come in? Knowing that, well, I don't know what's going to happen next, and I can't predict it, but I know that I'm in this real sticky situation at the minute. So how do you navigate that? How do you use this insight to navigate those moments, which I think are the ones that most people are really not, I don't suppose, yeah, really bothered by, because they're the ones where it's like, well, that's when it seems to matter the most to them. Is, well, what do I do then?
Yeah. I've got kind of two big examples. So when COVID hit, so it was March when all the work disappeared. In January, we were saying, with all the work that we'd got lined up, this is going to be our best year ever. And then in March, it was all gone, like every bit of it gone. Last year, my husband had cancer. So these are big, big things going on in life. The first night after Ash's surgery, I howled, completely and utterly howled at God. Just because the intelligence of life works through us doesn't mean that we don't have the difficult experiences and the noise and all the feeling that goes with it. We're designed to experience it all. And I think what people want is to get away from the feeling. And you don't, in those moments, you don't get away from the feeling. But you're okay despite the feeling. I was really worried about the financial situation when COVID hit. And I wrote the daily yarns every day. I spent 3 to 4 hours writing them, but I had a load of thinking about what I should be doing instead of doing this. But there was still something that was, I don't know, there was still something that was making me do that. So we don't get away from the feelings. I don't think anybody does. I think, when you're going through tough times, you have all the fears, you have all the anxieties, but there's something about knowing that we all, the thing that people don't pay attention to is that they all get through really tough situations. And I've heard people talk about I wasn't very resilient at that time, when actually they were more resilient than they've ever been in their life to get through that time. But because it felt awful, they put all this meaning, they make all this meaning about all the things that they were doing and experiencing. And that's the thing. Like I do very little of the beating myself up anymore. Like there is still some residue of that, but I try not to have all this expectation of what life should be like and what I should be doing and how I should be acting, how I should be feeling and how I should be behaving. And this is how I am right here, right now. And if that's howling at God in the middle of the night, then that's how I am in that moment.
Hmm. Well, thank you, Lord. Thank you for sharing that. Do you mind if we ask, like, how is Ash doing now?
He's good. It's a year. It's a year since his surgery just over, and he's healing well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that is great news. I tell you what I heard in there, Maria, which, and it just made me realize, like, I'm so guilty of this, of thinking that, like, I need to feel good in order to follow my wisdom. Like, oh, those two things, like, I need this in order to that, versus no, like, if you can feel how you feel and your wisdom is still there. Like, that's what I heard in your
Yeah.
writing, the daily yarns, was, oh, the worry was still there by times, the roller coaster, as you called it in the book, the roller coaster of emotions was in full swing.
Yeah, completely.
And you were showing up to your wisdom every day and going, well, I guess I'm still being called to write my daily yarn, so I'll do that. And that's the trust. And the other piece that it just struck me again, it struck me when you said it before, but that statement, I don't know where you said it came from. I know not to trust my thinking unless it wishes me well, is just how much grief we give ourselves when we're not feeling great,
Mm-hmm.
as though we're doing it to ourselves, as though we're sometimes to blame. And it feels like what you're pointing towards is the acceptance of all the feelings, and pointing to, no, this thing is true. You don't have to believe me, but this is true. Whether you're above the line or below the line, this is still true. It's just being okay with wherever you are relative to the line. And then this, listening out for this thing, whatever it is, because it sounds like there's a real, I don't know if the word is discernment or distinguishing. Like, would you put it as something, I can't think of a better word than a skill, but have you just become more tuned in to the feeling of your wisdom? Like, what, when people, when I think about the noise in my head, and when I'm noisy, like, my feeling system is firing, so you're kind of caught up. It can be sometimes hard, as you pointed out, to distinguish, kind of like, hang on, what's noise and what's the signal here? Like, how is there a way that you have learnt to practice tuning in the noisiest of moments?
I don't think I ever know what's wisdom and what's not.
Mm.
I think it's hindsight that tells us whether it was wisdom or not in the moment. It's like, I know when I'm not in a good state of mind because of the quality of feeling about it. I think it's a really tricky one because we really want to know whether what we're saying and what we're doing is coming from a place of wisdom.
Mm.
And I'm not even sure if wisdom's a red herring. I don't think I've ever said that before. but I think it's really hard to know in the moment whether it's wisdom or not. I don't know, because I didn't know that writing the daily yarns on a daily basis, that I didn't know that was wisdom. I didn't know that was it. That was just what felt right in the moment to be doing, regardless of the noise. And I think that's the only discerning factor. Does it feel right in this moment with everything that's going on? This just feels right. And sometimes there's the feeling right comes with noise even. I was just like, when I made the decision to go self-employed, like I made it in a moment. I heard somebody speaking. I thought, oh, she can do that. I can do anything. And the next minute, I've made a decision. I'm going to, give up a really good job, and I'm going to start my own business. There was I didn't know it was going to work out. I had no idea, but there was a feeling to it that didn't brook any argument. I suppose that's the best that I could say about it. It didn't brook any argument. It was just, this is what I'm doing. And it's only when I look back, I think, that was, the wisdom speaking to me, the guide speaking to me. When I was ill with depression many years ago, that voice that said to me, go to the doctors, get some medication, find a therapist, get yourself out today, which were nanoseconds of light in the darkness, 3.5 months period of darkness. Those were the moments of light that you don't even, it just felt right to do that in the moment. It's only in hindsight, looking back, that I think of it as wisdom.
Mm. I think you're right. I think you're right about the wisdom being a red herring. As you were talking there, something popped for me that there is a red herring that can just take you down take you up into your head. Oh my God, is this wisdom or is it not wisdom? And suddenly you're trying to think your way into it versus no, just let go of all of it. And it made me. I had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Christy Halverson, the other day, and she just went, "That's all wisdom." At the end of the day, and I didn't hear it then, but I just heard it now. It's like, well, it's all wisdom at the end of the day. Just settle down and then take the next step, and you can't get it wrong. You'll find out in hindsight where it's taken you, and I love that. You'll see more in hindsight. Hindsight is a real gift. We think we have great foresight, but I'm not sure we actually do. I think we like to think that we have foresight, but I'm not sure we do. Anyway, that's yeah.
I heard something very similar, and I think you said one of the most profoundly beautiful things that I've heard on these podcasts, when you said, the experience of your partner being ill or financial worry or whatever calamity, trauma, um, misfortune, suffering occurs, there's this wonderful sense of knowing everything is going to be okay, even if you're dying.
Yeah.
And and I've certainly come to experience that, and I think that is, when you talk about being able to take your hands off the steering wheel, people might think, oh, that's all about like just being happy-go-lucky, what have you. But the flip side of that coin is there is a profound sense of comfort when you are in those dark experiences and you are howling at God or Allah or whatever your chosen deity is, and but you have this underlying sense that you're being, something's catching you, you're going to be okay, there's something that's going to help you get through or cope or experience this from a place of awareness that perhaps you hadn't had before.
I think
I think
the bit in that is the going to be okay. Like it's not like it's that in that moment, regardless
You
of what's
are
going on,
okay.
I am okay,
Right.
regardless of
Right.
everything.
No, thank you for that correction. Yeah, yeah. So that feeling in my mind, when I heard the two of you talking about like wisdom being a red herring, in my mind, that wisdom is the common denominator, because it's not like wisdom appears and disappears. Wisdom is constant. It is everything. And when you're in that moment and you're experiencing that darkness, in the same way as when you're experiencing light, when you are present to it, you see the wisdom of it. And I know that's a difficult thing to say, because it's hard to say to somebody, oh, you're gonna go through this depression or this anxiety, this really dark time, this partner being ill or this loss of a loved one, but you will see what you're meant to see, because when you get present to it, you'll see the wisdom, because it's constant. And that is, I find that incredibly powerful and incredibly beautiful sentiment that I often lose sight of. And what you said there and the way you captured it, just, I mean, I felt it. It just welled up inside me. It was like, yeah, there it is again. Yeah, yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting just reflecting on that. The time when that night when I was howling, I've never expressed those feelings as freely as I did that night ever. And I think that's because of the grounding and the understanding. You know, I remember when my dad died, I didn't cry for a fortnight because I had to hold it together in order to be able to do this long, it's 30 years ago almost, long before I had any understanding of this and, who I am underneath all of it. And the fear that if I was to cry, if I was to let my feelings out, like it would kill me. And so having the freedom to allow that noise to come out of me, that in itself is was a fabulous experience, for want of a better word.
Mm. Well, it goes back to your sentiment earlier of we are not broken.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to be okay. I am okay. Just the way I am in this experience.
Mm. Wow. Well, I'm in a very nice feeling right now, which is good. Maria, we do. This has been amazing. It has been amazing, truly. There's so many, almost other conversations I want to have with you immediately, which is the best sign of these conversations.
Yeah, I really
We
thought we'd be talking about writing today.
No, it turns out that's another podcast. That's one down the road. We do have a closing tradition,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think I've told you about this, but you might be aware of it. But which is to invite our guests to create their bumper sticker for life. So if you could create any bumper sticker, what would it say and why?
Shit happens, but I'm okay. Now, it's really funny because I didn't know you were going to ask me that. And as soon as you started asking the question, I was reminded a friend of mine died. He was only 46 when he died. Very, very close friend. And his saying was always shit happens. And so I don't know, I think, there's a reason why that came in. But the phrase is often shit happens and then you die. But that's not it for me. Shit happens and I'm okay.
Yeah, lovely. I love that. It ties everything up really nicely, what we've explored today. So a beautiful bumper sticker. Billows, any final comments from you before we kind of bring everything to a close?
We always get to the end of these episodes with these remarkable human beings, and you do have the sense that you're just scratching the surface. And and to echo Al's sentiment, it's so lovely to be able to speak these you wonderful people and you, Maria, into the world in this way, and then listen to your story and pull on the threads. But you're always like, damn, I just wish this could go on for another couple more hours, because I do want to ask you about your writing and I'm fascinated about that journey. So we're going to have you back. But this has been really lovely. And I think what you've pointed to and what the listener heard, what I heard, I think was just pure magic. And so thank you so much for your time, and it's been wonderful having you on Live Into Your Brilliance.
Thank you very much. I've already said that you both asked such brilliant questions. Really great questions. And they weren't, they were digging deep. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, brilliant.
Well, thank you.
We've loved having you on. Maria, I'm sure people listening or watching will want to go and buy your books or learn more about the work you do. And if they're in the writing world or leadership world, will want to know where they can connect. What's the best place for them to find you, to connect with you, to learn more?
Yeah, so in the leadership world, they're probably easiest to find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm on there, Maria Iliffe-Wood. And I have my writing website is iliffe-wood.co.uk.
Brilliant. And we'll put links to those into the show notes as well, so that people can just go and click and go and check that out. And all the books, I think, are on Amazon and all good on bookstores. You'll be able to find them. Yeah.
Yeah.
From my side, Maria, look, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. It's been, the whole conversation has been a really interesting reflection and just the kind of noticing kind of state of mind and state of being, like traveling through a conversation. And maybe for our viewers and our listeners, the bit you said something which really struck me about what you say to your clients. You don't have to believe. You're not asking anyone to believe you. They don't have to believe you. And that's one of the things I heard. The intelligence of life works through us. And hey, you don't have to believe that. And yet, what an opportunity to get really curious about the possibility that it's true.
Mm.
And that, if someone said well, how do I do that? And it's just simply noticing, like, notice where you are, notice your state of mind, and be okay with that where you're at. And then be curious about what's there for you. That's what I really hear. Be curious about what's there for you, whether you're in, a stormy situation or running through the meadows. It doesn't matter. It's just like, notice where you're at and then listen for what you know to do next. And then see what happens, see what happens. See if you can have the same experience that Maria pointed to, which I love when you said, I went back through all of my life and I can see evidence of this everywhere, even before you knew about this.
Yeah.
And I've had something similar. And I would love to make that invitation to anyone watching and listening, which is, get curious, look back through your life, see what you see, notice what you notice. Maybe wisdom is best seen in the rear view mirror. And that's pretty cool, because then it'll give you more confidence, more trust, more faith to live from that place moving forward.
Yeah.
So Maria, thank you so much. It's been a real treat. To our listeners, to the watchers, I can't wait to just hear from anyone that what they do after this, what they notice. And as always, like, you are brilliance. You're made of it. It works through you. So go forth and live into your brilliance. And we will see you next week.